It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, November 25th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that hopes you're not still dealing with that food coma after Thanksgiving yesterday.
It should never last that long.
All right, let's get the show going.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Locked On Flyers. That's where you'll keep up to date with our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. On today's show, we've had a little bit of a break with some good food and family and friends. And so we want to just take a step back and say, okay, what are the biggest problems with the Flyers and what can we do about them? And then we will get into a preview of the two weekend matchups against the Pittsburgh Penguins and New York Islanders. Locked On Flyers is free and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening right now. Hit that subscribe button. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube, so you can look at our smiling faces over there as well. Russ, I do have one interesting question before we get going on the Flyers. Our good friend Ian over at Locked On Bruins suggested that, especially in Canada, there should be NHL hockey on Thanksgiving because, their Thanksgiving is a different day. And so it's just kind of a regular weekday for them. And that it wouldn't conflict in Canada with American football. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, there's a time, I would say a gap, where you have the 8 o'clock game for football, even in the States, and the 4 o'clock game. So if you had like a 6 o'clock hockey game, I think that's fine because, again, not everybody's going to stick with that 4 o'clock game. There's another game at 8. Your game's just about over at 8. It does satisfy everybody in Canada having an evening game. I think it's a good idea. I don't see why they don't do it. But, again, they're not going to do it just because they just feel like it's the NFL's day and they just have given it up.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation to be had, though.
Yeah.
I do think you could have a good Canadian matchup on that day, and that would work out really well. Shifting gears to talk about the Flyers, like I said in the intro, there's some fundamental issues with the Flyers right now. And so I thought we'd talk about some of them and whether or not they're fixable and what we would do about it. I think that one of the top issues for me anyway is the power play. It's been absolutely dreadful. And I think to some degree it's cost them games. Like if they'd scored a power play goal in several games, they at least would have been in them.
Right.
Much better. It would give them a better chance to win. It wouldn't put as much pressure on the goaltending to steal games. And I think my biggest hope and wish is that when you're using Tony DeAngelo in the power play, like he is good at it in terms of, going across the blue line. I think that he takes some good shots, but his defensive woes, and when he takes a big shot or somebody else takes a big shot, it leaves them really vulnerable defensively. And that's when you see, like we saw in the Caps game, teams getting shots on goal the other way, shorthanded, because there's a lapse in the defensive side of things. So I would like to see him play on a power play where he still does the same role, but there's another defenseman out there with him, that it's the 3 forward, 2 defenseman style of power play. As much as I, in the grand scheme of things, would prefer a 5 forward power play if you have the personnel to do it, I don't think the Flyers do right now.
They
and
don't.
I would maybe put a Travis Sanheim or a Justin Braun even, I gotta say, out there with him.
Yeah, I like the idea of Sanheim. Yeah, D'Angelo's a good passer. His shot could be a little more accurate too, and he could use it a little more. Like he's been a little tentative at times on power plays and just been too quick to pass it. It's like you do have to sort of look at the personnel and say, all right, I'm one of the best guys in this power play. I kind of have to drive the offense, and he's not really done that. So I agree. Having Sanheim out there would be good. I think that would work. I mean, again, we've talked about Owen Tippett being on the wrong side. I don't know how long they're going to do that for, but you're just minimizing the guy's one timer. Makes no sense. You know, they've got issues with it, but I'm trying to tell people they have enough personnel that to score on a power play. I don't want to hear excuses that they don't. There's enough guys there, enough talent there to score on the power play. But you're right as far as defensively. If they shored that up a bit, that would help on the other end.
Yeah, I think the other observation is I feel like I've been seeing that slingshot pass more and more this
Yeah.
season. And, we saw it a lot last year. It kind of became a running joke for me personally, like a drinking game. But I think that I don't like it for the Flyers for the main reason that they have trouble getting through the neutral zone in general. And so when you're trying to depend on one guy skating fast through the neutral zone, in this case, you're giving other teams a chance to set up three guys pretty solidly in the back half of the neutral zone. And the Flyers are not a team that can get through like that. They need a multiplayer rush.
Yeah, I think they do too. But, the worst part is when they're doing the slingshot, a lot of times now Hayes is bringing the puck up. There's nobody on the other team that's worried about Kevin Hayes going end to end. So he's the wrong guy to do it. The idea of the slingshot is if you have someone, I'll just use a guy like Quinn Hughes. Well, you're worried about Quinn Hughes actually, breaking into your territory and going to the net. You're not worried about Hayes doing that. So you got to use somebody else.
Yeah. With Travis Konechny in the lineup, sure, you can give it to him. He's a guy that can do it.
Right. I think even Tippett could get away with it. Frost definitely could get away with it. There's other guys that at least have more moves that you would say, all right, the other team has to sort of, look out for that. But they've got the wrong guy doing it. And it's just, again, what we're seeing here is basically a coaching staff that has a philosophy and is putting all the veterans in the roles that they feel like are key for them to fill, but not all the veterans are the guys you should be using for it. And that's the real issue here is it's not like the young guys aren't getting a chance. It's not that. It's just that the young guys are not, other than Noah Cates, really none of them are being put in better positions for their talent. They're just going with the veterans, and it's not working. They're not that much better than last year. I mean, other than saying there's a better effort, the record's not going to be, it's not that much better right now.
Totally with you there. I think the other main issue for me is just getting and keeping possession in order to create offensive opportunities for them. And I struggle a little bit with, can anything be done about this with the current Flyers personnel that we have? And I think part of the problem there is that the Flyers are not getting puck support for the breakouts, that they're getting the puck and they're not, really having an effective way to do their breakouts in a way that's going to surprise the other team or at least get a jump on the other team. But what is your take on that?
Well, my take on that is, first thing is you have to realize as a coaching staff that when we're facing a faster team, if you're getting guys, and I've seen McEwen do this and I've seen others do this, if you're going to just throw the puck into your own end, you've got to throw it in where you feel like your guy has a chance of getting it. If there's nobody in the corner and the other team's faster, they're going to get it first. They're going to get the puck and they're going to get it out of your zone and go up the other way and, get out of the offensive zone rather, and they bring it up the other way and try and score. I just feel like if you want to get offensive zone possession, you've got to throw it in the corner where your guys are close and can start, pinning it against the boards and start setting up. I don't see them doing that enough. All I see are just these blind dump-ins, and it doesn't do anything for possession. It's like you wish that somebody, and again, I think this is where Torts fighting the analytics is bad. You wish that, that somebody would show the players, and it would have to be Torts, that, hey, every time you lose the puck, this is the amount of time it takes for us to get it back. Because I think that's what's really killing them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's that in combination of just like not being smart about the hits that they throw. I think, obviously they're good at hits. They have
Mhm.
guys that do that, but they're not using them effectively to change possession and then keep possession, right? They're not throwing hits to keep somebody from interfering with somebody taking the puck off the ice,
Right.
They're
Sometimes you
just
just see the hit against the boards and it's a
right,
high up, and maybe it
right.
is in your own end and you're defending, but it's high up and it had no bearing on where the puck was going. I see that.
No.
I see that out of Ristolainen. I see that out of Delorier. I do see that. Now, Delorier had a good game last game. It was finally a game where I could say I felt like he was pretty effective. But,
Mhm.
for the most part, you're right. The other thing that's driving me crazy about this team are the offensive zone penalties. Like, it's just, listen, you've got the puck in the offensive zone. Why are you tripping somebody? Why are you know what I mean? I get it. I see you want to get a goal, but there's other ways to do this. And those penalties are a killer, again, because the Flyers' zone time isn't very good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we've got more of those things to talk about to try and improve this team coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports, and of course the NHL. We've got it all on betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like ours, you could find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on this app and wherever you get your podcasts. Russ, I think, obviously it's not utilized as often, but probably more often than we would like. The 3-on-3 overtime has been a struggle for the Flyers. And, like we said in our recap of the Caps game, it's either they're holding on to the puck and doing nothing with it, or they can't get possession of the puck. It's like nothing in between
Right.
right now. So I think, for me, I would just focus on taking more shots, but good shots, not the big wind-up shots that are going to make
Because
a
you have to have the
break out the
speed.
other way.
Right. You have to have the speed to be able to recover for that if it doesn't go back to one of your guys. You're right. And that's something where I think they're missing the boat on. But I honestly, here, if I could go with 3-on-3, if it's going to be against the Penguins, I'm going with Provorov, Cates, and Tippett. I'm going with my defenseman who has good skating, but also a good head on his shoulders as far as seeing where plays go. I'm going to have Cates, who right now is their best defensive forward, who has some offense in his game. And then I have Tippett, so I have the big shot, so he can take the big shot. I think that's the way I would go. Going with what they went with the other day made no sense. They never touched the puck. I mean, right now, if I were the coaching staff, I would be like, if this is a game that's 3 minutes to go and it's a tie game, I'd be like, we got to win this game.
Right.
No, I mean, that's exactly the way I would say it. I wouldn't say we don't want to go to 3-on-3, but I'd be like, listen, pull out all stops to win this game, because it's demoralizing for this team to go to 3-on-3 and continue to lose. That's why Torts brought up the losing thing the other day, because it doesn't matter. The point doesn't matter, right? The point doesn't matter because they're not making the playoffs. But what does matter is winning and losing, and it does get demoralizing after a while. And again, you're going to go up in 3-on-3 if it happens against Crosby, Malkin, Letang. Like, you don't want to go there.
You do not. That is true. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think, you try to win these games in regulation. And if you can't, you got to put guys out there who are going to be smarter about it and more effective. And Kevin Hayes is is not that guy right now, and
No.
he's been put out there on 3 versus 3, and I don't like it personally. And
I've seen this on Twitter.
Power play problem with Tony D'Angelo on the defensive side.
Yeah, it is. I've seen this on Twitter where they're like, well, Torts is putting him out there because he's the highest point guy. But this is a different animal. This has nothing to do with how he's getting points. He's not set up for that. You're right.
Yeah, I think, some more minor issues. I might put Risto back with Sanheim. I think it's time.
I would.
Yeah. I just think he needs to. He is stepping up a little bit, but I think he needs to be back with his regular partner to be the most effective. Just because he's like the muscle memory is there, so I would do that.
It just seems like this coaching staff is fighting that, and the problem is by putting Braun up, you're getting more penalties out of Braun because he just can't do it for an entire game. I would say, and I don't know this for sure, but the last couple of games, his penalties have picked up.
Yeah, I think
as they played these tougher teams. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a couple of games this weekend back to back, starting with the Pens that we've been talking about already. And the Pens have won 4 in a row. So, they're doing all right as of late. Man, their most recent game against the Flames was actually a really fun game to watch. They were celebrating Malkin's 1,000th NHL game. He wound up winning it in the shootout for them. And so it was a pretty special night, I got to say. I don't know if like being in Pittsburgh is like rubbing off on me or something, but I'm like feeling okay about the Pens right now. But they also shut out the Jets. They won against the Blackhawks and the Wild.
And the Jets have been playing well, so.
Yeah. So, they had a bit of a rocky start to the season. There was like a lull there where they weren't winning at all, but they seem to be back on track, and they're just above the Flyers now in the standings. They're trending well, though, 6-3-1 in their last 10. And of course, we know like they've got the big guns on the Pens who still seem to be playing well, despite, their aging.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like the aging is like insignificant for these guys. It'll eventually catch up to them, but it's not this year.
Yeah. So, Crosby's got 27 points so far this season, not too shabby. Malkin's got 20 points, which is far and above anybody on the Flyers right now.
Yeah. I mean, the first big question is who's covering Crosby? Like, honestly, who are you putting to cover Crosby? I mean, if it's Hayes, yeah, you could lean on him a little bit physically. If it's Cates, he's going to get used a little bit because of his inexperience. Like, there is no good matchup against Crosby, and that's...
Man, I miss Sean Couturier.
Yeah, this is where you miss Sean Couturier, or just having a good defensive center, which they really don't. Even with, if it were Scott Lawton, if he were healthy, all right, maybe he could do a little bit. But this is going to be a big hole in their matchups. It's to do that. And again, just to point out how forechecking is fine. Having a good forecheck is fine. Fighting once in a while is fine. It didn't work against the Capitals. I don't think it's going to work against the Penguins either because they have guys that are willing to do that, but then they also have the other stuff to back it up. Like it's just... You have to, watch out for that because, again, you put this team on the power play too much, you're asking for trouble. Even if it's not doing well, Letang, Crosby, Rust, they're going to, again, so those guys are going to wake up against Philly. It's always going to be like that. So, to me, I would rather try and be on the offensive as much as I can. If I have to forecheck to do it, that's fine. But also, I got to get back on defense. I do have to help my goalie because he's going to be under siege today.
Yes, that is definitely true. Yeah, I think, the problem for me with the going up against the Pens with the personnel that the Flyers have right now is that the Pens have 2 rock solid lines. And so you can only put like the top defensive guys out there against one of them. Right. So we have this Malkin line with Zucker and Rust that is just as lethal as the top line with Crosby.
Right.
And I think that puts them in a difficult position where you're like, oh, are we putting, Patrick Brown out there against one of them is Sedlak. Sedlak, I don't know that he could cover them either. So I just kind of worry about the Pens having, again, those two lines out there as well. And Tristan Jarry seems to be back on his game to a large degree right now, so it's not going to be quite as easy to score against this team. Even like getting lucky, I think Jarry has been coming up big recently.
Yeah, see, this is, again, and I don't want to harp on it too much because I'll hear about it, but I have to. This is where you'd like to at least see D'Angelo step up offensively, because defensively, I mean, listen to his last 5 games: -1, -3, -1, -1, -1. And he always had 1 point in those games. Like, the whole point of Tony D'Angelo is, if he's going to be a minus for that, I got to have points on the plus side that are helping my team. That's not happening. He's got 10 points in 20 games. Like, he's got to do more for that. He didn't get $5 million just to kind of play 30 minutes a game and get occasional points. Like, he got $5 million because, they expect him to get 50 or 60 points this year, and he's not on pace for that.
No, I think, if we think about what we said about the power play, right, I think we have to put Tony D'Angelo in a position to do what he does best.
Yes.
And do it well. And so if he has more defensive support so he can, do his thing offensively. I mean, it sounds terrible to say that about a defenseman, right? It's in the name of the position.
But it's just the way it is.
But it is. That's his game. And let's make the best of what he can do. And I think against the Pens, it would be possible. But again, we just have to get that defensive support out there. So I think Provy's going to have a tough game because he's going to have a lot of responsibilities in this one.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of responsibilities. And look, he'll do a good job. He's used to it. They might keep this game close for a while. That's fine. But again, the deeper you go into this game, if you're not like 3 goals ahead, you're in trouble. We're all going to be. And listen, every fan, every media person is just going to wait for that shoe to drop for them to come back in this game and tie it or eventually win it. So this is a chance for the team to kind of turn that around. If they don't, like we talked about, everything gets slipperier. Then you got to go against the Islanders, who always are, even when the Islanders were bad, they were always a tough rival. If Sorokin's in net, right now he's the best goalie in the league statistically. Like, that's what you're looking at. So, like, what's gonna do it for you? You can't always, it's whoever you have on the ice. It's up to the coaching staff to utilize them best. And honestly, they haven't been doing that.
Right. Well, you mentioned the Islanders. They are the second half of the back-to-back, and we're going to talk about them coming up next. Russ, we have a home and home against the New York Islanders starting on Saturday. So it's up on Long Island on Saturday and then at home on Tuesday. And both teams will be on the back half of a back-to-back. Obviously, with the Black Friday schedule in the NHL being bonkers, pretty much everybody is playing that day. So both the Isles and the Flyers will be playing tired. The Isles are playing Columbus today. I think they have a pretty good shot of winning that game against Columbus. But right before that, they shut out the Edmonton Oilers. Sorokin had 49 saves in that game, just playing out of his mind in that one. Yeah, that
was an Islander record for a shutout, most saves. That was, really impressive. My guess, and I don't know for sure, but they probably play Varlamov against Columbus because they want to maybe play Sorokin at home. That would be my guess. So I don't think the Flyers are going to get a break that way. Matt Barzal's having a really fine season. He's more than a point a game. You've got the same old guys that
Barzal struggled with getting goals. He had a ton of assists,
but he's not a goal guy. He's just not.
No, but still, I think that was kind of hanging over him for a while, and it was like this running thing with Islanders fans.
I think it was just with fans.
But he did. He did. Yeah.
But this is just with fans. Again, if you go back and look at Matt Barzal's career, he's not going to score goals. Again, I'm tired of watching people slow down video and say, look, see, if he'd have shot it there, he could have had a goal. But you're now going to tinker with the whole way this guy thinks and the whole way this guy plays to get like 5 extra goals in the season where he's going to get a mountain of assists. You don't mess with it. If he gets you goals, he gets you goals. You don't look for goals out of a guy that's inherently a pass first guy. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And people act like it's easy. But again, they're not a high scoring team, but guys like Noah Dobson, who can really move the puck from the blue line, have been doing great. You have Pulak with a great shot on the power play. Mayfield always plays tough, borderline dirty. That's what he does. Kazikis is always dirty, and he always.
That fourth line on the Islanders bugs me so much, and they always seem to get one against the Flyers. Like Matt Martin and Casey Cizikas always seem to, like one of them at least, always seems to score.
Yeah, they're like the Hanson brothers against the Flyers. They are.
They are. They really are. But yeah, the Islanders have been in a period right now this season where they're winning the games they should win, occasionally surprising with a win against a tough team, and occasionally having a loss against a weak team. I think they got shut out by Arizona.
Yeah, they're not dominant like they were a couple years ago.
Right. But they're playing solid hockey, and they're in second place in the division, right below the Devils. And they're 6-4 in their last 10. So they're kind of doing mostly the right things and winning when they're supposed to, which is really, what you want out of a team.
Yeah. My hope here would be, even though the Flyers have a tough schedule here, is if you have to face Sorokin, do some film study, see, and again, he's playing like the best goalie in the league. So just putting shots on net is not going to do it. You got to see what he's being more susceptible to. If it's high glove, then go high glove a lot in that game. You have to do something like that if you want to beat that guy. Otherwise, you're just going to hear at the end of the game, well, it was Ilya Sorokin's game. Well, great. But once in a while those guys lose too. So.
Right. So my question is, does Kiefer Bellows check into that game, and does he get a revenge tour?
I mean, I would do it, but this is Torts. He may not. But I would certainly do it. I mean, it would be the ideal time to put Kiefer Bellows in, and I would move him up. I would probably put him on the second line just for a little while, just so he has a little bit better chance of scoring early and maybe trying to change the momentum. If he doesn't do well, drop him back down. I get it. But I have to do something to try and play with them, with their heads mentally. Absolutely. Let him go out there and be physical.
Yeah, I think that's the right call, just because guys, who get waived when they play their former teams, there's just an extra energy there. And I think he is, while he's been a mixed bag with the Flyers so far, I think this is the kind of game where he will step up for it and excel. So I think you're right. Play him up a little bit, but, and give him a chance to succeed. But, don't be afraid to put him back down to the fourth line if he's not.
Yeah, and I would still try and put the Cates brothers together. I mean, like I said, Jackson did really well towards the end of that game, had a really good scoring chance. You never know when you put two brothers together, the kind of cognitive edge that they have on the ice, because they know where the other one's going. It's not the Sedins. Listen, I know that. But there's still something there because they're used to playing with each other so much. Why not try and take advantage of that?
All right. Well, we'll see how the Flyers do in this back-to-back this weekend. We'll be back on Monday to talk about it. Wrapping up with our Flyers fun thing. Of course, Gritty participated with the other Philadelphia mascots in the Philadelphia Thanksgiving Parade, put on his turkey costume, which I love. It just looks so goofy because Gritty looks goofy to begin with, and then you add this like turkey hat. It's really funny.
Well, he's got the build of a turkey, though, so he's got that.
He does. And I think the photos were actually really quite good, like, and striking.
Yeah.
In an odd way. Like the art museum step photo, I think, is like pretty money. I really like that one a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's the best mascot in town. I mean, that's not saying much for the other guys. I don't know. Is it Swoop? Is that who?
The Fanatic? You don't think the Fanatic is the best mascot?
The Fanatic's kind of gotten old. No, I don't. I think the Fanatic's gotten old. I think the Fanatic's a little off.
Enemies with that.
I don't care. I think the Fanatic's a little off his game. I like the Fanatic. Look, nothing. I was at the game where Noah Syndergaard stole his cart, and of course, eventually became a Philly, and that was funny. I like all that stuff, but I'm just saying, I think the Fanatic's a little off his game, and as much as I dislike Gritty, I think he's moved ahead of him.
All right. That is the hot take of the day from Russ. That'll do it for today's show. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send your questions via Twitter or Instagram at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody.